Hello and welcome to Mecklenburg Construction's next video blog, bathroom remodel, and question of the day. But before we get to the question of the day, we're going to explain to you guys how there can be significant differences in contract costs for a bathroom remodel or services by contractors and why those costs can be so different. So when we've gotten to a spot where we're getting ready to do tile, we have preparation to get that far before we can even do tile. And that preparation includes everything from subfloor prep, framing preparation, layout, design, considerations on different design aspects. All those have to be taken into account before we even swing a hammer or do any installation of materials. Now, something that also matters is what materials are going to be below the surface. So critical materials are not your finished materials. Critical materials are your substrates, your backer boards, framing materials, plumbing materials, all the different things that go behind the wall and behind the finishes. But your critical areas are not actually your finishes. So when you ask a contractor or when you're seeking a bid, you want to ask, what are my critical materials behind the wall going to be, behind the finishes? How are you going to treat it? Are you going to put waterproof membrane? How many layers of waterproof membrane? What type of waterproof membrane? Are you going to seal the corners? Are you going to seal the seams? Are you going to seal the screw heads? Are you going to use the correct rated screws to install those substrates? The reason why this matters is because your tile, if your grout fails, or if your tile fails, or over time, as the life of the tile is used up, that water will get through those materials or seep. And when it does, it can cause huge damage to your home, your framing, your subfloor, all of your different structural components of your home beneath those surfaces. And the damage won't be restricted just to that area where the water leaked. There can be black mold in the walls, like we found on this project. Also, when we opened this project up for demo, we found somebody used plastic as a waterproof barrier behind the walls, which is a big no-no. And that was behind the concrete board, and the concrete board wasn't seam taped, it wasn't sealed on top of the seam tape, as you can see here. We've got it all seam taped. We've got 3 coats of waterproof membrane on this. The waterproof membrane always goes, it's the last surface that goes on top of your substrates before you lay tile. Always. Now, these are things that are very important to ask your contractors. Also, layout. Now, in this particular one, we're going to be going with contemporary and a modern layout. And what that means is we're not going to be doing subway tile or a subway style design. Our tiles are not going to be staggered. We're going to be using 2x1 tiles throughout the whole entire field of this project. It's going to be on the floor, it's going to be on the half walls, it's going to be on the shower walls on the outside, inside, up the shower walls, all the way to the ceiling. Now, the contemporary modern means because we're not staggering them, those lines, the grout lines and seam lines that you're going to see, have to carry all the way from over by the toilet on the far wall, another full 18 feet over to there, also side to side, up the walls, up the shower walls, up the benches, and all the way to the ceiling. And we're going to make it so that one line, when you stand over there, can be seen all the way, completely straight, up this wall, over the back side, across the floor, up the other side, into the ceiling. And that's going to be lines both horizontal and vertical. So when we do our lines coming up where our double vanity is going to be, these lines coming across the wall, because we're going to have a decorative band across the top of the countertop, and then on top of that would be bullnose. But those lines are going to carry across the walls sideways this way and also across the floor this way, perfectly and exactly. And our grout lines are going to be 1/8 inch and less, which is typical for our installs. That's another thing you need to ask your tile setter or your tile contractor. When I have tile, and that tile is finished, what is going to be the grout thickness? Because the general rule of thumb in the tile setting world is that the thicker the grout line, the less knowledge and less install experience that tile setter has, because they use those thick grout lines. In some cases on this project, we have 3/4 inch grout lines. I mean, that much between tiles. That's because those tile setters don't know how to deal with the margin of error on tile, which is really none. There's very little. but you hide it in the thicker grout lines. Well, we don't do that. We deal with the margin of error, and we keep our grout lines to an 1/8 inch or less. That's less maintenance, it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing, and it's just a much cleaner look than having wild grout lines that vary, and you're filling cracks and corners and everything with really wide grout. That's more maintenance and it's just unsightly. So that's very important to ask also, how thick are my grout lines going to be? Now there are times where people want 1/4 inch and greater, but generally speaking, unless you have real big field tile or want those large grout lines, we don't install that way. So those are important key factors to keep in mind. And also, what has a significant impact on your end cost when you receive a bid is to keep those things in mind, because there are significant differences in prep and finishes and getting to both of those areas. So that brings us to the question of the day today. And the question of the day is going to be, where do we start to find our layout? And our layout can take up to several hours just to figure, to get all of our lines straight this way, all of our lines straight this way, and all of our lines straight this way. And I'm setting a decorative tile at the top of the countertop, and that line's going to continue across the walls and then the lines down on the floor. Where do we start to begin to find our layout? And I'll give you a hint, it's not on the floor. So that's the question of the day. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you, and see you next time.